welcome to Desert Island Geek. Each episode, we welcome one self-confessed geek to our deserted island. But there's a catch. They may bring 5, and only 5, of their most essential geek items they simply cannot live without. Welcome back to another Desert Island Geek, and this week we have Sebastian Prooth coming onto the island. Now, Sebastian is a published writer, a blogger, a film producer, and he's an all-round media geek. He's an avid Star Trek fan, and he's interviewed many of the key personnel involved in the Star Trek franchise. Ultimately, he wants to work in TV or film as a producer. Sebastian, welcome to the island.
Thanks, Neil. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, as you know, you have a number of items you're permitted to bring onto the island, 5 items in total. And the first one that I need to verify with you is a website. What website have you chosen?
Well, I've decided to bring Wikipedia along with me.
Okay, now that's kind of a default choice, isn't it? Because it's almost the obvious one. So I'm going to be really firm with you here and say you're going to have to really work hard to justify this.
Okay. Well, if I'm going to be stuck on this island for God knows how long, I'd like to be able to continue my work as a writer. And a great resource is Wikipedia because I can look up things and write about things and continue doing what I do and not actually have to use any technology to do so because generally I write with a pen and paper anyway.
Actually, that's a different angle because we had someone in a recent episode who said that he wanted Wikipedia for survival tips. So they'd be able to sort of look up the various fauna on the island and decide what was poisonous and what wasn't. So for you, it's about research. Now, would it also act as inspiration for you? Maybe if you got a little bit of writer's block one afternoon, just after lunch.
Well, just after lunch on a desert island in the middle of nowhere. Yeah, I think that it could act as inspiration. Could definitely help with identifying things. I hadn't thought of that. I'd already made provisions for that. The reason Wikipedia is such a great resource is because it's constantly being updated. So I don't lose. I can check the front page to see what the news is, and I can, stay pretty current with Wikipedia.
So how would you feel being sort of quite remote and potentially not being able to make updates to Wikipedia yourself when you see errors in the information?
Well, generally, I don't edit Wikipedia because I've noticed if I've done it in the past and put effort into it, it just gets deleted. So I just leave it alone and use it for referencing things that can be cross-referenced, usually on the other places on the internet, because I don't generally trust Wikipedia's totally. In this case, if I'm going to be stuck on an island, I don't think anyone's going to be checking my facts too much either, so I should be okay with user-generated information, wouldn't you say?
Well, you see, my mischievous side would suggest that I would actually want to go in and start feeding misinformation and edit Wikipedia and feed misinformation to you in order to guide your writing and your inspiration down particular directions.
Well, that sounds particularly devious.
Would you feel inclined then to maybe when you eventually come off the island, actually start a Wikipedia entry for the island itself with all of its various information?
Well, that's interesting. If I have Wikipedia with me, why shouldn't I create the article while I'm there and I'm able to update it as well? And this is the island of Desert Island Geeks, and it has so many million billion grains of sand. And
well, you're clearly planning on being on the island for quite some time if you're going to calculate the amount of sand.
Well, I'm sure it could be done, couldn't it?
The second item you're allowed to bring on is a podcast. Now, we don't actually get involved in this in the island about the technology barriers to actually receiving websites and podcasts and so on. So maybe we can have a discussion. So if you have some ideas in how we can actually implement the access and so on, feel free to interject those into the conversation. So, a podcast. What would be your choice?
Let's take the BBC News morning podcast.
That's an interesting choice. Now, to anybody listening who doesn't know, the BBC have a more light-hearted version of the news in the morning called Breakfast, and it does have formal news sections, but also has kind of magazine sections as well. And I think it's around about 7 a.m. in the morning. This is also pushed out as a podcast. I'm presuming that they record the first time, they go through the news and the discussion, and then push that out as a podcast. So that would be your choice. So do you choose that because of the variety, the fact it's not just hardcore news in that particular program?
Well, I think choosing the morning show allows me to stay in contact with people, even though I'm isolated, because I'm able to find out what's going on, especially because I can hear people who I'm familiar with. It's not like being stuck on the island with a volleyball and just nothing else to do. So if you have somebody like the two morning presenters on the BBC, and you kind of listen to them talking, and they go through the headlines and they talk about what's going on, they talk about they give little tidbits from their personal lives, you almost feel like maybe with that morning update that those people come and see you every morning.
So it's the familiarity, but isn't there a danger in that kind of situation that it may actually make you more homesick?
Well, it could do. But you didn't mention in the brief on this island how to that I wouldn't be able to construct anything to get myself off it. Is there absolutely no way to build a boat to get off the island?
Who knows? It depends how resourceful you are, I think.
Depends on how resourceful Wikipedia are.
That may well be the case, and who knows? You may never know. You might have on breakfast time one morning. You might actually have an article about building a boat.
Well, they might, or they might have. Was it Helen, the lady who crossed the ocean single-handedly? Maybe she'd come on and give some tips.
Oh, so I see what you mean. So you can monitor the news, and the next time Ellen MacArthur's doing her round the world trip solo, you'll know when she's going past, and you'll utilize that as a potential pickup.
That's right.
Now, see, don't you think there's a little bit of a danger there that Ellen might be going around solo, and if she picks you up, she's no longer solo. So, do you think she may actually be inclined to save you, or do you think she's one of these totally focused sports people who's dedicated to the cause and will do everything she possibly can to
unless she gets off her boat and says it's against the prime directive to bring you aboard, I'm going to get on her ship and we're going to go.
Well, at least that way you're going to get home pretty fast, actually, because her boats tend to be zippy, shall we say?
Yeah, the little catamaran things, aren't they?
Yeah, catamarans and again, for anybody that doesn't know Ellen MacArthur, and she has, isn't she the fastest solo person around the world or something like that? She won a race.
She still holds the record, yes. Yeah,
absolutely, quite amazing what the pain and suffering she goes through when she's actually alone on the ocean. And that, I think, if you're on an island or something, I think being on firm ground and having things around you, food and plants and animals, has to be a lot easier to deal with than being right in the middle of a completely featureless ocean.
Well, I think that it's very cathartic for her because she probably is able to analyze the most deep, dark, and hairy parts of her psyche, where she can figure out, what exactly makes herself tick while she's in the middle of a completely glassy field that she can't see, a way out of. Must be claustrophobic in a weird sort of way.
Do you think you'd have a similar experience, and not quite to the extent that she might? Do you think you'd have a similar experience on the island, being alone?
I think being alone on the island for when it becomes weeks and months could become extremely lonely with no contact with anybody that talks back. I mean, you could talk to the people on the BBC when they say good morning, you could say good morning and pretend like you're talking to them. But eventually it might become monotonous and you'd just fizzle into slight depression or maybe even heavy depression. I mean, just look at what happened in Castaway. The guy tried to kill himself.
It's such a jolly subject we've actually got onto, is his being sort of depressed on a desert island and wanting to kill yourself. So let's move along to something that's a little bit more uplifting. You're allowed to have one music track with you, and it would have to be a track that you're going to be able to listen to without going additionally insane for a period of time. What music track would that be?
And this was a pod-safe track as well, is that right?
PodSafe, yeah, PodSafe is useful because we're able to play it on the program.
Okay, well, let's go for some selection from American Heartbreak. I think they're just about the best PodSafe music I've heard.
Okay, so one track we have to
Last of
insist
the
on.
Superhero.
Last of the Superheroes. Okay, and why would you select that?
Well, I think I like that best of the songs I've heard of theirs. I've heard their entire album, and I also think it might have some symbology to my situation, being the last of the superheroes on the island. You know, maybe there's been a lot of people on that island over time, and I'm the last one, or the last one alive, or I don't know.
Okay, let's have a listen to that particular track. Last of the Superheroes from American Heartbreak.
We've seen them on TV our whole life. Super Friends were the Rolling Stones, were larger than life. I can be like anyone I see on a record album sleeve. Pistols and the Who, Dolls and Ramones, Don Kirshner on TV. We are the last of the superheroes. We are the last of the superheroes. The last of the superheroes of the 1970s. Pandora's box, sick as a dog tonight. Rock and roll damnation, the FM station, Kiss Alive. POC, Bad Company, got stars in the Dream Police. London town had the hell-bent sound, Bowie and the Sweet. We are the last of the superheroes. We are the last of the superheroes. The last of the superheroes of the 1970s. Sitting home alone with remote control in a cyber zone. Nowhere left to call. No more superheroes of the 1970s. The last of the superheroes. 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 We are 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 the last of the superheroes. The last of the superheroes of the 1970s.
We are back again. That was Last of the Superheroes, American Heartbreak. That's Sebastian's choice for his one music track that he will have with him on the island. Now, originally when we spoke, you wanted to have some Mozart on the island. Now, as I said, primarily we wanted to have PodSafe so that we could actually play the track on the actual show itself. But tell me about why you would have wanted Mozart, and in fact, Flute and Harp Concerto.
Well, I think that classical music is far more timeless than anything that's been produced in the last 100 or so years, 150 years. And the Flute and Harp Concerto, and I don't suppose it really matters who's playing it as long as it's a traditional version, is timeless and has so many facets and levels that you can appreciate every time you hear it. So say I listen to it once a week on the island or twice a week on the island. Every time I listen to it, I would hear something new, depending if I wasn't there for 1,000 years. And I think that the Mozart, I mean, no offense to pop music and certainly no offense to PodSafe music, but there just doesn't have what classical music has.
I see your point where you're coming from that. And do you find that because Mozart tends to be, for the most part, most of his work, I'm not actually familiar with that particular track, but most of his work tends to be very uplifting and very positive in its tone. Do you think that will help you as well, psychologically?
Well, it might do, but it might also serve to remind me how I can hear no more than that one. I don't know. I haven't actually started my journey yet, but as soon as I do, I'll let you know.
Now, I can foresee two sides of the coin for some of your choices here. You see, you're choosing things that you feel will help you, but as we go through the discussion, you're noticing that there's a different side potentially to these selections. Now, your next selection, I don't think there is a negative side to it. I think it's going to be very positive for you. Again, it's a little bit of an obvious one though, so you're going to have to justify it really hard. You're allowed one book. And what book is that going to be?
The book I'm choosing to take with me is the SAS Survival Guide, so which is how to survive anywhere on land or at sea. And the reason I'm taking that with me is because, as most people who haven't been Boy Scouts or Civil Air Patrol or Army Cadets or whatever won't get survival training, don't really know when they go out into the forest or to the desert island what they can eat, what they can use to fish, all sorts. And I saw an interesting activity when I was at college, which was how we were given a pile of stuff and told to survive on a desert island with it, and then they showed us what the SAS do with it, and the SAS use like amazing amounts of things, from just things like a fishnet skirt or things like that, just random things you would not expect. So the SAS are the people to listen to when you want to survive on an island.
Yep, that kind of makes sense. Now, interesting you refer to sort of Cub Scouts and the fact that they actually have survival training. Is that your perception of I say there was slight sort of snigger in my voice because having come through the ranks, shall we say, of scouting, your perception is that they have some kind of survival training?
Well, I would expect so. I know that the Civil Air Patrol, which I was a member of for about a year in America, which is the auxiliary of the United States Air Force, does have survival training. And you go on bivouacs and go do physical challenges to survive outside. Things that, they take away your radio. And you just have to get used to the fact that you have limited means. I would have thought that the Boy Scouts would do the same thing, if I'm wrong.
Well, in my personal experience, I think building a chair, cooking on open fire, and telling ghost stories to get each other frightened to sleep at night is about as far as it goes. And I remember having basic skills. I mean, I know how to operate a piece of wood and some string and build something to sit on, or cook with, or whatever. But survival training, no, I wouldn't say survival training as such. And from what I've heard, the way that the sort of scouting teaching has actually evolved since the many years ago that I was actually involved, it's even less of that kind of thing. So actually, I think you may have an advantage because you've had a little taste of that kind of training. So you might be starting with an advantage here.
I would feel incredibly disadvantaged stuck on an island on my own, believe me.
Well, at least you have the SAS Survival Guide, and as you say, sort of how to survive on land or sea. Have you actually seen this book? Have you actually flicked through its pages?
No, but I read reviews of it when I went to choose it. I haven't actually physically seen the book because it's on Amazon. But everybody says it's an excellent survival guide. I'm not sure how many people have used it to survive with.
Well, you see, that's a really good point, because I suspect that most people who are actually rating it have not actually put these things into practice, and I would suspect that most people are actually incapable of putting these things into practice, because the majority of people who are completely stranded in some kind of emergency situation are actually more inclined to run around and scream.
Well, I think you might run around and scream until you realize that what you did with yourself would determine your survival. I mean, I know that I would probably scream for the first couple of days, but I think I would get used to it in a couple of days and start to deal with my situation rather than. I mean, I know that humans adapt very easily, and if you are in a situation that's suddenly different, for example, the TV show Lost, which I have watched none of, they crash in this airplane and they have to survive on this island. Well, how many seasons have they been alive now?
Yeah, you should have watched that. Maybe you'd have some survival tips. But they do say, apparently, survival experts do say that the one key factor in survival is state of mind. If it's you that survives. It's not based on what's around you or whatever. It's to do with your state of mind and how you react to your environment.
Well, exactly. If a man believes he's going to die tomorrow, he'll probably find a way of making it happen.
That's very, very true. So far, we've had a website, Wikipedia, and the only reason I'm going to permit you access to Wikipedia is that you do have a very original justification for that, which is inspiration for you and research for your writing. So we had the music, we had the podcast, we had the survival guide with the book. We have one last thing that you're allowed to bring in, which is a gadget, some form of gadget. What would that be?
I chose to bring in a GPS so I could map the island. If I can't get off it, I want to know every nook and cranny of it so that anyone ever invades, I can keep control of my spot. So it's a GPS from Garmin, the GPS 60, which is from Amazon as well.
Why that one in particular?
I looked at them and I was thinking, what has the easiest screen to read and looks like it would be the toughest? Because I would imagine on that island, even though I'll be the only one there, things will be exposed to the elements far more than they are sitting on my desk right here.
All right, so this is very much one of those outdoor rugged kind of things. So it's not like the kind of thing you'd have in your car.
Exactly. I believe this one is waterproof as well.
That would make a lot of sense. Now, you say you're concerned about invasion, and do you feel there may be other islands around? Have you heard about the cannibals on the nearby island?
I hadn't heard about them, but now that I have, I'll make sure that I watch out for them. I think that I don't know if I'm supposed to add anything here, but the first thing I would think about after food, water, and shelter would be to construct some sort of weapon so that I have something, a handheld device, whether it be an extremely nicely shaped log, branch, or whatever, something that I could use for personal defense. Because I think that once you have that security, even if it's not particularly good, if you say to yourself, "I've got a weapon," me caveman, me got weapon. I think you'd feel better about being stuck on your own in the middle of absolutely nowhere. Is my logic flawed?
I think maybe it would certainly make you feel empowered. I think over over your surroundings, and certainly you're potentially in a situation where you are deserted and therefore you don't have full control over your destiny. And I think maybe that empowerment would help the potential sanity issues that we discussed right near the beginning of the program.
I also think that if you have something in your possession that is powerful, like you said, which is a really good point, it gives you the power. If say there is an indigenous other human life that is maybe not quite as advanced as we are, I don't know, on this island, if they probably don't have any technology, and if they do, then I'm going to go call home. But if they are a threat, they will think twice before attacking someone who has a weapon than they will with someone who doesn't have a weapon, unless, of course, they think you're so powerful by your presence without a weapon that they don't come near you at all.
So potentially, the other route to survival against anyone else who may attack or already be on the island for you is to give them the impression that perhaps you're their god.
I was thinking about that, yes. I think that it would be important to establish parameters with them, especially if I'm going to have to live with their presence for a long time. So either one, make peace with them, or do my best to make peace with them.
As a Star Trek enthusiast, of course, I have knowledge of Star Trek as well. So the Prime Directive comes into play here.
I'm not going to give them my GPS, don't worry. Or I think though that, I mean, if they see me in blue jeans and a t-shirt, what's going to happen to the course of the universe? Nothing's going to change. These people, if they're on this island with me, or if they're on a neighboring island, we could be beneficial to each other. They could teach me how they learn to survive, and I could teach them how to take care of me.
or you could become part of their evening meal.
Yeah, well, I could. That's probably more likely.
Well, Sebastian, it sounds like you're going to have a good time on the island because you're certainly going to survive. You're going to have some entertainment. You're going to have some inspiration, so you're going to be creative as well, which is an excellent thing to do. And you're going to be able to defend yourself, which is very important. And, of course, you're going to know and understand and map every single nook and cranny of the island. Maybe produce some maps and scratch those into rock or whatever for any future habitants of the island.
Maybe I could make some fake gravestones to confuse the next people.
That would be quite intriguing. It may concern them a little bit as to what went on in the past.
Yeah, it should be fun to it would be fun to try it on the holodeck. So you could say, oh, you know what, I've had enough of this. Especially if the safety system that make it so you don't die on the holodeck is in place.
And then you see, now perhaps that should have been the gadget that you actually brought with you.
I didn't know I couldn't bring anything but real devices. You should have told me I could bring a tricorder, and I'd have brought a tricorder because that can be a GPS, a survival guide, the BBC, the music, and Wikipedia.
There you go. That maybe we wouldn't have allowed a tricorder because of it's just a little too versatile, perhaps, and gives you the ability to do everything pretty straightforwardly. But all of your items you can take with you. We've approved all of those items, and you've justified them rather well. And we hope you find some quality time, shall we say, while you spend some time on the island. Sebastian Prooth, thank you very, very much for your time. Enjoy yourself, relax, survive, and get to know this new home of yours.
Well, thank you very much, Neil. It's been a pleasure, and I will, of course, oblige you on this wonderful holographic island.
That was Desert Island Geek. This program was produced and presented by Neil Dixon. To get yourself in touch with the show if you want to take part, have a comment, or want to suggest a geek for a future episode, drop us an email. customs@desertislandgeek.com.
The best and the brightest served up daily by the sharpest minds in content delivery, pod show, and limelight.